Good afternoon, everybody. Hi, it's Danielle here from Remember Illustration, and I see all of you guys popping on and finding the event. I have shared it to my page, my personal page, and to the Paint Night group, so hopefully you guys can all find me there. Good afternoon. I can't wait to paint something really colorful and fun and funny with you guys. This is a really cool one because you can adapt it to however you want. If you're not into UFOs, but you really like sunsets and UFOs, then you can, or sunsets and trees, then you can still paint this painting and just, you know, minus the alien and put a puppy in instead, or just do no figures and add birds in the sky or something like that. So, anyway, I'm really excited to be painting with you guys. We've been doing this at least once a week for about 2.5 months now since we've been doing the shutdown, and I'm really happy to be able to come into this space with you guys and to be able to create, and I look forward to walking you step by step through what we have going on today. So the theme is UFO glows. We want to make it look like our painting is glowing and bright and colorful, and then create a contrasted silhouette of some northwest trees. So I'm going to show you guys the painting again so we can take a look here while we're waiting for people to join. You guys are going to be able to create this within about an hour to an hour and a half, and you just need minimal supplies. If you've purchased a paint kit from me, you should have received acrylic paint with all of the primary colors that you would need, such as red, yellow, blue, and then white and black for lightening and darkening your colors. If you have extra colors that you would like to add into the mix here, like if you already have some pre-mixed orange or some pre-mixed pink or purple or any of those other colors, then you can definitely play in the meantime with those. So we are going to create this whole painting using one brush. I have two brushes, so I have a small flat brush, and I can create this whole painting using this brush. If you have a smaller detail brush, then you can definitely use that. If you have a bigger brush for more quickness when you want to create clouds, you can definitely use one of those big brushes. But we are going to get started shortly. I just want to make sure that everybody has their supplies. If you're new to joining us today, welcome and thank you. I'm so glad that you found us. Please share where you're from, what ages are going to be painting with you, and be sure at the end, please, to give feedback and share your paintings. I'm really happy that you guys are here, and we're going to have a really good time. So let's see. So you want to have your paint ready. If you have a pencil, you can use a pencil to roughen designs, but for this, it's not really necessary. We're going to do this in 3 phases. So the first phase is going to be to paint all of the clouds that are up above in the background sky up here. And then we're going to do the bottom part down here first, then we're going to do the clouds up here, and then the third and last section of this painting will be to create the silhouette, or the trees, and then the alien and the UFO, or the man, or whatever you want to imagine that is. So if you have some friends that are not tech savvy and they want to paint this, or you're joining just to watch and you don't have all the supplies, the link for this video will be up for a short time. What's happening here is I'm offering the classes for free for people that already have supplies or just want to learn the techniques for the class, and then I'll leave it up for a short amount of time. And then I take the video down. And if you're interested in a video that you wanted to watch and you missed it by chance, the other way that you can watch these videos is I have what's called a Patreon account, which is basically a subscription to me. So all of my classes are saved there. You can rewatch, replay classes. I also do extra drawing tips and offer free coloring pages and send you postcards and free art. So if you're interested in what the Patreon link is, I have shared that link. We can talk about that later. Let's get to creating and do some fun stuff. Hopefully everybody has found us and we'll be able to get started efficiently. I want you guys to look at a few things before we start painting though. Yay, I love it. So the first thing that I want you guys to pay attention to are what colors are you seeing in the painting, and what kinds of directions are the brush strokes going, okay? So you'll notice that we kind of have this fisheye lens view of our sky. So the way that we get that is, and the way that we subconsciously draw our viewer's eye into where we want is by manipulating the brush strokes in the way that we want them to look. So in order to get that fisheye lens, you'll notice that the brush strokes down here kind of form a curve or an arch that's kind of smiling upward. So the reason why we're going to paint these brush strokes in first is because these are kind of straighter lines. And then when we paint these clouds in, we can kind of disguise the top edge of those smoother, straighter lines with these fluffier clouds. And then we want to make sure also, the other thing that I want you guys to be aware of is that we're kind of going from lighter to darker colors as we move our way up the canvas. And the reason why we want to do that when we have a silhouette too is we want to make sure the area that we're painting black has a strong enough contrast for when we're painting against that, okay? So if you guys have any questions while we're painting, feel free to say, hey lady, stop. We need you to slow down, or, you know, type thumbs up so I know that we're on the same page, or type a quick question if you're having trouble blending or any of those things. We've got nothing but time this afternoon, so don't feel like you're rushed in any way. I want to make sure that everybody leaves with a product that they're proud of, okay? So here's our painting. Now I'm going to be rude and I'm going to take that painting away. I have a little bit of a smaller canvas that I'm going to be painting on, but that means you guys will get a nice close-up image of what's happening. So again, here, let me scoot this over so you guys can see that better. So again, we want to take what we're going to use first is we're going to use a small flat brush. So if you have a small flat brush like this, that's great. If yours is a little bit bigger, that's okay. No problem. But how we're going to use this is instead of using it with the wide part of the brush, you're actually going to turn it sideways and we're going to use the skinny edge of the brush. So I have several colors on my palette here. Like I said, you should have all of the primary colors. You should have red, yellow, and blue, and then white and black. Those are the main colors that you need, but if you have extra premixed colors like pink or orange or purple, those will definitely benefit you. I'm just going to show you my plate here. So see, you should have all of those colors. Okay, and so the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take my brush and I'm going to dip it into some white paint. So I'm just taking my brush, putting it in some white paint. And if you don't have canvas, guys, that's also okay, because you can do this on paper, you do it in your notebook, try it out with, you know, follow along with crayons if you have. So I'm just picking a spot in the lower part of my canvas, and I'm just using white paint, and I'm just going to wipe my brush back and forth in a curved motion. And I want to do that, one, to get a feel for how my brush is in my hand, feel for it, and two, to set a base for where we want the light section to be, where that glow and that alien is, okay? So I'm just wiping some white on here. So it's not going to be, you're not going to be able to mess up your canvas because the canvas is white too. So I'm starting with white, and then the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to leave my dirty brush and I'm going to touch some yellow. Okay, I'm just going to touch. So what I do when I load my brush is I dip into the brush, and then I'll generally wipe my brush on both sides so that the brush is loaded, but there's not big blobs of paint, and I have a little bit more control. So once I have yellow on my brush that already had some white on it, I'm going to start a little bit of ways from that white section, and I'm going to pull very gently and into the white, and I'm going to make some curved brush strokes. And so what you'll notice while I'm making these curved brush strokes is two things. All of my brush strokes are not the same length. Some are shorter, some are longer, and they're allowed to touch the white, because what will happen if they touch the white is you'll just get a lighter yellow. Okay, so I'm going to do that on one side, and then I'm going to go to the other side of the white and do the same thing. Okay, and I'm going to surround that white section with some yellow, but I don't want to fill up the whole bottom of my canvas because I want to leave room for some other colors. Okay, so you'll notice that my brush strokes on this side are curved up, and then they come down into a scoop, and then when I start to paint on the left side of my canvas, they'll curve up. Okay, so we want to kind of keep this smile. So what you can do if the white is not very blended in there is you can take your brush and you can clean it off into your water bowl. This is how I clean my brush. I take it and I stab the bottom of the water bowl to make sure that all the paint is free from the bristles, and then I pull it flat with a paper towel, or if you have an old washcloth or something that you can use, that's great. So if this is not very blended and you want it to be more blended, you can put more white on your brush, wipe your brush off so you don't have too much, start from the middle of the white, and then see how I can start from the middle and then blend out, and it will make it softer. The other thing to keep in mind here, guys, is we want the colors to connect and we want them to blend, but we don't need them all to be one solid color. We want a variety of colors. So in order to make the paint layer and not all turn one color, you want to wait and not put a ton of paint, okay? Because acrylic paint dries quickly. It'll be easier to layer and spread things out if you use less paint. And if you're trying to blend and soften an area, you want to do that while the paint is fresh on the canvas. If it's not blending, it's because you either haven't run your brush over it enough, or you're not using enough pressure, or you don't have enough paint. And if it's all blending into one color and you can't control it, it's because you got too much paint and you gotta calm down. Okay, so the next thing you want is you want to take and mix a little bit of an orange color. So if you have some red, you can take a little bit of red and some yellow, and you can mix that together to make a very light orange, or you can take a little bit of white and add that to it to change it to make it more of a pastel color. If you have it pre-mixed orange, you could also use that. And if it's too dark, you can add yellow to that or white to that. So the next color you're gonna want is orange, okay? And we don't want it to be a dark orange, so you want to add a lot of yellow to it or a lot of white. So see here, so I added some white to get my light orange, okay? And because I was mixing, I have a ton of paint left on my brush, so make sure that you wipe your brush off on both sides like a peanut butter knife, and then you can start on the outer edge of the yellow. So I start away from the edge here. I start in the middle section, and then I kind of start to pull towards the yellow as I have less paint on my brush. Okay, and you'll notice, see, all my lines are different lengths. Some are longer, some are shorter, and I don't want to push really hard. I want my brush to be flat and sideways so that I'm getting skinny lines. If you're not getting skinny lines, it's either because you're pushing too hard or because your brush is wide ways instead of skinny. And if you have really hard, so we're going to take this orange and we're going to kind of blend it around. So see, I can put some down here. I can go to the other side and I can add some on the left side. And it doesn't have to be a lot. If you don't like orange, you don't have to put a lot, but we do want to kind of add some of that in there. Okay, maybe a little bit on top. If you don't want to, you don't have to. But see, I'm just taking yellow and orange, okay? And I'm gonna clean my brush because I don't want to mix too much of that orange into the next color. But I'm gonna go back to, what I'm gonna do is I'm either gonna go back to yellow on my brush, or you can take a little bit of white and see, so a little bit, not a lot. You start in the yellow, and then while that orange paint is still wet, I can start from the yellow and then pull in and touch that. And the more I run my brush back and forth over the paint while the paint is fresh and wet, the more it will merge and blend that together, okay? So if you're having issues with the paint blending, it's either because the paint's too dry or you don't have enough paint on there. But see how I took the yellow, after I put the orange in, I started in the yellow and I brought yellow back over, because if yellow mixes with orange, all that's going to do is make more orange, but this will help blend it in. Okay? So now we have some pretty yellows and oranges to create a nice little glow there. So if your orange is too dark, remember, what can we do, guys? What can we do if your orange is too dark? You can do one of two things. You want to make sure to either wait for the paint to dry so you can cover it up, or you can take yellow, or you can take white. So see, look, if I take white and I run that over the top of the orange and the yellow, it's just going to soften that. So if you felt like your orange was too dark and you wanted it to be a little bit lighter and more subdued, you can take just white paint. And you hear how you hear the sound of the brush? It's because I'm pushing with a little bit of firmness just to kind of push the paint into the other color and combine them. And the more you run your brush back and forth while that paint is fresh, the more blended and smooth it will be. Okay? And then I want to add, so the first thing that we did was we added a little base here of some white, then we added our yellow, and then we kind of added orange around that. And again, it doesn't have to be perfectly symmetrical. It can actually be the opposite of that. And then next I want some pink. So if you don't have a pre-mixed pink, you would just take red, just a tiny bit of red with some white, okay? So if you don't have a pre-mixed pink, then you can make a pink by just taking a little tiny bit of red and mixing it with some white, or you can use a pre-mixed pink with white, okay? And you're gonna wipe your brush, and then you're gonna add that pink to the outer section of the orange. And you don't have to add it everywhere if you don't want to. You can just add it in a few sections. But you do want to make sure that when you are adding it around, that you are still making even though your brush strokes are not all the same length, that they're still, like if you're on this side, you want the brush strokes to be curving this way. If it's on the bottom, you want it to be back and forth in a very small curve. If you're on the left side, then it's going to curve up and away. And then when you add those colors in, you don't want to start right at the edge. You always want to start a little bit away, so that when you have less paint on your brush and it connects with this color, it's a lot easier to control and make it a softer transition. See, if I had a lot of paint on my brush and then I started right at the edge of this, see, it's going to leave a very hard line and it's harder to control. So I like to start a little bit away, and then you can kind of pull into that here too. So the reason why I went in this order too is because pink is a great transition color for when we want to add like blues and stuff. Because if you add blue to yellow or blue to orange, you get green or you get brown. And so if we want to keep all those nice vibrant colors and make a nice exchange here, we want to make sure that we have a transition color that will complement the other colors that we're adding to our painting. So am I barreling through this? Am I going too fast, or is everybody on board with me? What I'm hoping is that we're providing a fun distraction, some nice relaxing time. You guys are able to let go and, find a little escape here and, possibly learn something new at the same time. And then don't worry about what it looks like on this upper edge here, because again, we're going to add some clouds and stuff over that, and that part is going to get covered up. And then if you have a stretched canvas, make sure that you're also painting the sides of your canvas. Does anyone have any questions so far? Maybe add a little pink down here. All right, and feel free to make sound effects while you're painting. It helps the process. So the replays will be up for about a week. And so if you do not have a chance to paint along with us right now and you do want to paint this later, you will have your opportunity to still be able to watch the replay. And again, if you missed the chance to watch the replay, you can come back in and you can subscribe to the Patreon, and that's another way that you can participate. So the next color that we want to add in, guys, I think a little purple would be pretty. So if you have red and blue, you can make purple by mixing a little bit of red and blue together. And if the purple is too dark, then you just add a touch of white to it. Okay, and if you have pink, you can add pink and blue together to also make a purple. If you have a pre-mixed purple, then you can make you can use a pre-mixed purple. But remember, we want the colors to all match the shade too. So you wouldn't want to use light colors for all of this and then all of a sudden use a dark color. So make sure that, you know, if all of your colors are light, that you're also using a light color when you add in here. So see, I'm going to add some purple in those spots that are left over. And make sure that if you do add in purple and it's next to orange or yellow, that any of those spots are dry. Okay? And remember too, this is a very strong color. So I kind of like to pull from the edge and not quite get to, you know, touch, because then you can come in with white and you can kind of blend in between those edges. Very gently, but over and over, just wiping my brush in that curved transition. So even though we're using a variety of colors, we still have continuity with the direction of our brush strokes. All of our brush strokes, see how they're forming this kind of a U now? And you don't want to go much further than the halfway point of your canvas. So far, so good. Hopefully we're making sense and everybody is going with the flow. This has been a class that I've taught at public paint and sip classes before. I've had kids as young as 6 years old sit in and join us. Most of the classes are made for all ages and all abilities. So if you have no painting experience, no worries. You should be able to follow along just fine. My motto for painting with groups is that there are no mistakes, there are only minor adjustments. And so if something is not working the way that you want it to work, just let me know and I'll try and see if I can help you make some adjustments to it. So if you want to kind of mellow this out, you can take just white on your brush. So just take a little bit of white and then go over the purple and then blend that into the previous color. See how I start away and then I pull in. What I like about starting away instead of right at the edge also is that it gives you a little bit more control about how far you want to go in. See, if you start right at the edge, then, you know, your color might start to spread further than you want it to. But if you start a little bit further away than where you want to add that in, then it's a little bit easier to make adjustments. Okay, and then if you have too much paint on your brush and you're adding colors in an area that you don't want, clean your brush, wipe it off, and then just run. You can clean your brush and then run a dry brush over the paint, or you can come back in when the paint is a little bit dry and you can make adjustments with another color like white or yellow or orange or blue. Okay, so if you come back in and you add more oranges or blues, just make sure you do it when the purple is dry so that you're not mixing those two colors together. So again, if you have a stretched canvas, make sure that you're painting the sides to make sure that it's all nice and even. And then if you want to add some blues in here, you can. So you take just blue and then in a few spots along the edge. See how pretty that is? What we're trying to avoid is it's okay to have a few hard lines, but we want to avoid too many of them. And what I'm hoping also by not saying put exactly this much yellow and putting exactly this much pink and this much orange is that everyone will have a beautiful painting, but they will all be a little bit different. That's what I'm hoping for. I want to see all the same themes of the painting, but each and every one of you to have an individual painting that is specifically yours that you're really proud of. How we doing? Did I stop for a second? Give me a thumbs up if you can hear me, just to make sure that we're all on the same page. I want to make sure that Facebook isn't cutting me off. Good. Okay. So again, if you need to, if you notice some spotting or some rough spots on your canvas and you want to come back in and kind of fill those in, you can come back in with white or yellow from the center. Just make sure that your other colors are dry. Thanks, guys. These Facebook Lives can be kind of finicky. I want to make sure that you guys are all on the same page. So I'm pretty much done with the bottom half of my canvas. I just want to make sure that you guys are all done. If you are all done, you know, give me a smiley face. Steve, I'm not sure. I was going to say maybe that's your connection. Is anybody else? It looks like everybody else is doing okay. All right. Oh, I love seeing the smiley faces. All right, so I'm going to call the bottom of my painting done for now, and then we're going to move on to the next section. So is there anybody that is not ready? And if you're not ready, make sure that you let me know so that I can keep us all on the same page here. I'm going to pause for a second and I'm going to show you guys what the original painting looked like so that you can stare at that and get an idea of what I was talking about when we created this section here. So see here we have our light section down here. Okay. And then the more dramatic your curves are on the side, the better. So if you make these really dramatic on the sides, that's good. Okay. So see how dramatic the curves are on the edge here of the painting? They come up in a dip. Okay, so I'll wait for everybody to catch up. No problem. There you go. You guys take a look at that for a second. All right, and you can always go back if you need to add in more colors later, guys. There we go. So here's the original, or I'm going to go back to my painting here. And again, don't worry about the bottom edges or anything like that because we're going to totally fill that in later with black, remember. Okay, so I'm just going to talk about the next part, and you guys can, you don't have to do anything about it just yet. Okay, so for the next part, we're still going to use our little brush, but instead of using it the way that we were doing, but we're making long brush strokes, we're actually going to use tapping brush strokes like this, okay? And so if you have a bigger brush, see this textured brush? Sometimes these textured brushes like this work really well for this, but if all you have is the one little brush, that'll work. Also, it'll just take you a little bit longer. In order to get the fisheye view lens that we want for the clouds here, we want to pay attention to the direction of the clouds, but also to the size of the clouds. So if you notice something here, the clouds that are in the upper area are bigger. See how they're wider in this section, and then as they come further down, they get skinnier. I don't know if you guys noticed that. See, here's like the big part of the purple, and then as it comes down, it starts to get skinnier and narrower. So that's one thing that you want to be aware of. And then the other thing that you want to be aware of is that it's also getting smaller. Yeah, so bigger up here, smaller as it comes down. But also all of the clouds, even though they're different colors, they're all kind of pointing towards one spot. You guys notice that? See, they're all kind of going towards the middle of our scoop here. So I'm just going to show you guys again what that looks like. And don't worry, you guys, take your time painting this bottom part, but I'm just going to talk about the next part because we're going to be painting it for a while, so we can add lots of different things here. So when you paint this, there we go. I'm going to start at the top of my canvas. See, I'm just going to take blue just to start to give you guys an idea here. And I'm going to tap, okay, to create kind of a, here, let me tilt this up a little bit more. There we go. To create like a lumpy cotton ball shape, okay? Lumpy cotton ball. And then I'm going to start to tap and bring that lumpy cotton ball down to kind of create a narrower point. But instead of it just being a perfect straight line, see how I'm kind of making the edges of it a little bit lumpy? See that? So this is going to be the base of one of our clouds. So if I want this to be even bigger on top, I can tap and kind of create more of a lump off to the side. And you'll notice how I'm tapping it in different areas so that it's not all exactly the same size, okay? So I'm just using blue just to start for this, and we want enough blue that we're able to spread the paint around, but not so much that it's like, you know, you're able to scoop it off with your finger, okay? So I'm going to do a couple of blue ones like this at the top just to give you guys an idea about directional stuff. So I'm going to create, see here, I'll create another, maybe another little cotton ball shape, okay? But see, this is pointing here, so that means that I don't want this one. I want this one to kind of point, this one points down so that they're all kind of pointing towards the same spot. And to give it a little bit of variety too, I also don't want them to all end in exactly the same spot. So see how I made, you want to make this one either a little bit longer or a little bit shorter so that it's different. It looks different. It looks like it's naturally that way and not supposed to be any other way, okay? So my middle cloud should be kind of pointed down, and I'm leaving space between those, okay? And that means that if I go on this side and create a cloud, I don't have to start all the way at the top either. I can start this one a little bit on the side if I want. See, but see how I'm creating my little cotton ball. Tap, 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 tap. So it's all lumpy. And then I want to start to, so you'll notice I'm not making polka dots. I'm tapping, but I'm slowly moving away so that the colors are blending together, and then I can create another little cloud. See, I can go back and forth too. I don't have to just do it once. I can come back over. But this one is pointing that direction. Okay, so if I want to make it more interesting, I can add like a little tail on it. See, I can, you know, add another little section that kind of comes out. But this one's going to be pointed in. So the idea here is, guys, to think of these clouds kind of like a clock. So here's 12 o'clock. This would be 2 o'clock. That means that if there's a cloud here, it's going to be 3, you know. I was going to say, hopefully you understand what I mean by that. So like when we get down to the sides here, this one's going to be more, it's going to slant more. It's not going to be the same direction as this. This one's going to be, see, a little more level. Okay. So I'm not doing this lightly. I'm pushing kind of firmly, and you can kind of turn the brush in different directions to get different corners of the brush and use up all the paint that's on there. But see, I'm starting with blue, and I'm starting at the top because the light source is here. And so that means that the stuff that's up here is going to be darker. And so I want any of my darker colors to be towards the top. Okay? So hopefully you guys that were finishing up down here can still follow along and understand what's going on up here. But those of you guys that finished that part can, you know, start to move on and work on this section too. So these clouds do not all have to be the same size. Look, some can be really tiny, some can be really big. See, if I want to, I can add tiny little patches in between. See? Because we're gonna have a variety of colors. So we wanna have lots of color everywhere. So just to give you guys an idea, again, here's the original. So look, see there? To give you guys an idea, okay? So I started with blue along the top, and if it's on this side, it's going to point this way. If it's in the middle, it's going to point down. If it's on this side, it's going to point that way. If it's here, it's going to point like that, okay? And so if I took some purple, so basically you're going to use this technique and you're going to fill it in with as many colors as you want. So the reason why it didn't matter what the top of this curve looked like is because you can come over that with color. So if I wanted to add a different color here, so see, I could take a purple cloud or a dark blue and I can run it along the edge of this. And if I felt like my lines were too flat and I wanted to make them more curved, then I can make this cloud more of a slant. Okay, and this will disguise the upper edge of that line. So if you're running into the issue of your clouds looking too rough and lumpy, it's because you have too much paint on your brush. Too much paint. So what I suggest is if you have too much paint and your lines are too hard, clean your brush off, wipe it off, and then tap with the dry brush over the top. And don't be afraid to, you don't just tap in one place. You can tap on the edge, move it towards the middle, tap back to the outer edge, move it towards the middle. The more you move that paint around, not by wiping, tapping. And the reason why we're tapping is because we want, this is called stippling. And the reason why we want to do that is because we want the texture of what happens when you tap with your brush. The other way that people paint clouds is they use circular motions, but this is a much easier way for beginner. So see, I have a dark color there. And so look, when I start to add in other colors, so see I have dark blue on here, I can add another cloud next to this one, and it can touch the other cloud, because guess what, guys? Clouds touch each other. So don't worry, we want all of these clouds to combine. We want them to touch each other, okay? But we want to leave space for all the other clouds too, okay? So you're gonna play. You can start with all your cool colors if you want and do your dark colors. See, I'm just adding clouds in. Different areas. And then when you get to the light colors like pink and orange and all that, just make sure that your blues and your purples are dry, because if they're not dry, then you're gonna get some really weird sky colors, okay? So I'll show you as an example. See, these blues are dry, so I can show you what happens when I start to add in other colors, okay? So instead of just using one color by itself, the other thing that you can do is, for instance, if I want to have a pink cloud, I will take pink on my brush, but then I will also touch white, and I won't mix them. I'll just have them both on my brush so that when I go to make a cloud, little bits of that white and the pink will appear, and I will have natural highlights and shadows without having to do a lot of work. So the other thing you want to make sure of is any clouds that are down here, you don't want them to be the exact same color. So I wouldn't want to do a pink cloud along here. I'd want to make sure it was either purple or white or light blue, something that's contrasting. So hopefully I'm not blowing your minds, and it's super simple to follow along so far. And I hope that the people that were painting down here were able to catch up, because painting clouds is fun. So remember, these clouds up here are bigger, and then as they come down here, you want these ones to be the same shape, but they're going to be a little bit smaller. See? A little bit smaller. So if you felt an area was too dark, for instance, so see here I'm adding a little baby purple cloud. But if you wanted to lighten up some of this, you can take just a tiny bit of white on your brush. And again, when I mean tiny, that means touch the white, wipe your brush off so you don't have a ton. And then you can kind of so you can follow the shape that you created. So look, if I go and tap along the upper section of this cloud, see how that kind of breaks it up? Okay, you can tap along or just tap a few spots on the intersection. And if it's not blended enough, wipe your paintbrush off, okay? And use a dry paintbrush just to tap and blend just on the inner edge. Leave the outer edge that you applied. So if you have a dark color and you want to highlight it, you can put a little bit of white or a lighter color along the outer edge. And then once you've laid that color in, wipe your brush off so you have a nice clean dry brush, and then you can kind of blend the inner edge so that it fades from light to dark. So we're just going to play, and we're going to add a whole bunch of fun, pretty colors. And you can use all of the previous colors that you just mixed, and we're just going to fill in this whole area with clouds. So if you add oranges or pinks or anything up here, just make sure it's a darker version up here, lighter version down here, because this is closer to the light. It's closer to the light. See, and it's okay if some of those colors overlap each other, especially if they're complementary colors. See, I put some pink over the blue, and what happens is I'll get a little bit of purple in there, and that's okay. And hopefully you guys are feeling confident and happy and able to make cool stuff. So the other thing is here, so watch. So if I use orange and blue are complementary colors. So if I make sure that's dry, I can tap in. Some orange. So white doesn't have to be the only highlight color. So if you wanted to lighten it, like if I'm putting this dark orange in here like this, and I wanted to lighten it up, what color could I use to lighten it up besides white, guys? Any takers? What color could I use besides white to lighten up this orange? I can use the color yellow. So if you need to, or you want to, and you don't like the way it looks, you can lighten up the orange with a little bit of yellow. That is correct. But it's fun to be bold. It's fun to be And here's the other thing. If you start going crazy on the bright colors and then you decide, ooh, I didn't like that much orange, or I didn't like that much pink, or there's too much blue, this is what I want you to do. Your instinct as a beginner painter is to just pile on the paint and add tons of paint. What you should do though is just let the paint dry, and then when the paint is dry to the touch, you can paint over the top of it. Okay, so if you get a little paint crazy and you add some colors that you don't love, it's not the end. You can always go back in and make adjustments with this. That's what I love about this technique also, is it's very easy to cover up layers that you may not want on there. So why this works together is purple or blue and orange, those are complementary colors. They're opposites on the color wheel, so that's why they pop so much. So yeah, you just want to make sure that the closer that you get to the light source, see, you don't want this orange to be quite as bright here. You want it to be lighter. But yeah, you should be able to mix it up quite a bit, guys. So if you do have the darker colors too, if you add the highlights, because the light source is on the bottom, a great place to add those highlights is along the bottom. So how do we add highlights if we want to? So you follow the shape of the cloud. So if the cloud is like, you know, going like this, you would tap along the bottom edge to break up. So you have that light to dark effect. And then if your cloud is really big and you want to break up little sections of it, you would just tap little sections of light in the middle of those dark areas to break that up. And again, less is more. It's much easier to add more paint than it is to take it away. So when you're making the clouds, don't use tons and tons of paint. Use a little bit and then gradually build it up, okay? And if you're tapping, it should sound like it's raining in your house, even though it's bright, beautiful, and sunny outside. So our main schedule, if you guys have been following along, mostly I think we're switching it up, and I'm going to do a paint class every Wednesday at 4 o'clock, and then every once in a while I will, you know, throw in a few little extras in there. I'm kind of only going a week or so out because, you know, we don't know, everything's unpredictable about where the future of everything is right now, and so I don't want to plan too far ahead and then have everything change. So I'm just planning my classes out, like, you know, a couple weeks ahead. If you guys have suggestions for things that you guys want to see, I'd love to hear your suggestions and would be happy to share with you guys anything that I can. I am a full-time artist is my job, so I'm at home creating for you guys all the time, and I want to still keep connected with my audience and make sure that I'm doing stuff that you guys are interested in too. And if you are having tiny spots of canvas show through the paint, that just means you need to add more paint or more pressure. Because we did not prime our canvas or put a first layer on, this is the first layer, and so some of that paint is going to absorb into the cotton of the canvas, and yeah, you will need to just add another little second coat of paint on there. No worries though, it's all about building it up. So if you have dark blues, you also want to have some light blues. If you have some dark pinks, you also want to have some light pinks. Make sure that when you're changing colors that you're cleaning your brush thoroughly in between each color so that you don't get a weird brown sky. And make sure also that if you're overlapping certain colors, like if you're putting blue next to orange, it will look like weird patchwork until you start to fill it all in, because that's what we're doing. It's like building a cloud quilt. And the other thing that people have a tendency to do when they're making the clouds like this is that you have a lot of paint when you get right to the edge here, and so you have really thick, strong contrasts. And that's why I say start in the middle of where you want the cloud to be, because as you have less paint on your brush, it'll become more wispy and soft when you are trying to blend it with the next color. And, you know, this painting should be a little weird, guys. It's about aliens, man. And again, if you feel like the colors that you're putting in the sky there's too much contrast, or you want to kind of tone it down a little bit, just try and stick to, you know, just a few colors. Like just use blues and purples and pinks, or just use, you know, reds and oranges and pinks. I'm combining cool colors and warm colors, and so that can be a little bit more complicated because, like I said, some of those colors can mix together kind of crazy. And so, I mean, it's all part of the experimentation. See, as long as the paint is dry, it's okay to overlap some of those other colors. And again, too, if you're just using one color at a time, I suggest using two. Like I said, I sometimes, when I'm making the clouds, it's nice to choose a color. For instance, if you're using pink, to dip into pink and then dip into white and have both on your brush. So here's how I load my brush, guys. So dip into pink, dip into white, wipe my brush so that it's on there, but not, you know, in huge amounts, and then start tapping away. And then we can come back in and add additional highlights at the end too. So this is just your first layer. So sometimes it's hard to see the big picture of your painting when you're in the middle of the process. And remember, you have to remind yourself that you're just, you know, you're working in steps towards the bigger picture. But it's never going to look like it's supposed to look like at the beginning. The other thing I want you guys to remember is don't forget to keep your clouds going certain directions. Something that I have seen people do is they start out with their clouds all going the right directions, and then all of a sudden they just put a cloud in the middle that goes straight across. You want to make sure that every time you add in a new cloud, that it's still going the direction that it's supposed to be going. So if it's in the middle, it's supposed to be pointing down. See? If it's on the side, it's got to be angled this way. If it's on the edge, it's going to be a little bit more flat. Same thing on the other side. So make sure that you are consistently, even though your clouds are all different colors and they're different shapes, make sure that you're consistently making them go the direction they need to be going in. So see, I'm just filling in these little patches. So remember, at the top of the cloud, they're going to be bigger, and then as they come further down, they're going to get smaller, okay? And then if you're getting a lot of white patches when you're making your clouds, try and push and tap your brush further into the canvas and push that paint into the surface. It means that you're maybe not pushing hard enough or enough times, and so you're not able to truly get that paint in there, or you don't have quite enough paint on your brush. See, the more I tap, the more it's going to push the paint into the pores of the surface. I live in downtown where I have the mufflers. The muffler cars are are really loud when the sun comes out. People see sunshine and they want to race downtown. I don't know how it is where you guys are, but that's how it is here. All right, guys, how are our canvases looking? Are they looking crazy, or are they starting to come together a little bit? What I like to do too is if you have too much paint on your brush, don't feel like you have to keep painting in one area. You can move your brush around to different parts of your canvas to spread those colors around to different areas. And I like to, keep painting until I don't have any more paint on my brush, and then I get into another color. That's another thing issue that people run into is they just keep adding paint to their brush and keep adding paint to their brush, and then everything sort of starts to blur together. It's a process, guys. It's a process. And we learn through experimentation. And so, you're figuring out how to use your brush. You're figuring out, what techniques work for you and how much is too much paint and how much is too little. And you're also hopefully listening to your inner guide, because we all have a different palette of colors that appeal to us. We all have different things that appeal to us visually. And so, you might lean towards more blues, or you might lean towards more warm colors, or you might want things to be more blended than I have. And so, you're going to learn, you're going to learn one way or the other what you like. And so if you have little patches coming through, you can just kind of come in with colors and start to fill in some of those little gaps. This part probably takes the longest, but I feel like it's one of the more satisfying parts of the painting too, though. So I don't know. What do you guys think? I feel like it's part of the magic. You start to see things come together. So again, let me show you guys one more time how to highlight these clouds if you want to. So you can either use just white by itself, or you can take a lighter version of whatever the cloud is. So I can either take white or a light blue, and see how the bottom of the cloud makes like this lumpy, bumpy shape. So I would take just a tiny bit of white, and I can go, I'm tapping just on the bottom edge to kind of mimic that shape. See that there? And then I can wipe off my brush, and then I can kind of tap on the inner edge, just the inner edge, so that I leave some of that cloud white on the bottom. And see how that kind of brightens up the bottom of that? That's what you're going to end up doing to a lot of these. So like if you had a pink cloud, you could use white, or you could just use a lighter pink color. So you don't have to highlight every single cloud, but I will tell you that at least the ones that are like near the bottom, if you add the little highlight to the ones near the bottom, it really starts to look like that sun spot is lighting up the bottom of the cloud. So see how I tapped that lighter color along the bottom there, and then you can wipe off your brush and then just kind of tap just on the inner edge, not over the whole thing. See how it kind of brightens it up a little bit? So see, I could take that and I can go along. And then if you have a really big cloud and you want to kind of break it up a little bit, you can add just a tiny little patch, you know, in, you know, one of the larger sections. I feel like too that if you have a lot of solid colors happening on your clouds, that those highlights really break things up and help pull things together too. See, if I felt like there was too much blue, I could add, you know, some more pink. You're not stuck with the first colors that you put on. If you want to add more layers, you can absolutely always go in and add more layers. So you guys may have recently seen too, I don't know if you were following yet or not, but I taught a class on how to create a Bigfoot, and then I took one of my paintings that I taught, because I create duplicates of my originals for all of these classes, and then I kind of gave it an upgrade. So what I like to do is in these classes, you guys are getting the basis for, you know, a strong painting, but you can always take it a step further. And so I wanted to show as an example like a way that you could do that. So if you haven't checked it out, you can definitely look on Remembered Illustrations Instagram or back in the posts on the Facebook page and see how I took one of the class Bigfoot paintings and then took it even a step further than what we learned in the painting class. So remember too, guys, we're starting to get full. If you have a stretched canvas, make sure that you're painting the edges of your canvas as well as the front, because we want it to look like a complete painting and be nice and buttoned up and pretty all the way around from all sides. Starting to come together. And if you are already done with your sky, give me a thumbs up or let me know that you're already done, so that because pretty soon we're going to be talking about the next part. I'm going to highlight some of these clouds and then we're going to move on to creating the silhouette. And remember too, guys, that if you are not completely satisfied with your sky and you want to add more to it, you can definitely come back to this, because the silhouette part where we do the black on the bottom is not going to affect your beautiful, beautiful sky. So you can always take a break from it for a minute, because sometimes people need to take a break and then do the silhouette and then come back to working on the sky some more. So see, instead of on the orange, see how a dead turtle. Interesting. I'm interested to see what your painting looks like. And remember too, guys, I'm stuck at home like a lot of you guys are too. And so if you need assistance with your painting afterwards, you can always video chat, or you can give me a call or send me a message with a picture, and I can definitely give you some advice on different things that you can do. That's also one of the advantages of being one of my Patreons, is I give one-on-one consultations. We can share tips with each other, and you guys can share work, and I can mentor and give you more techniques. And with the subscription to the Patreon, it's a monthly subscription, but you don't have to be a monthly subscriber. You can just do it for 1 month and then see what you think. And then if you don't like it, you can just jump off of there. So it's pretty cool like that. And there's also different tiers. Like if you spend $5 a month, then you get just the coloring pages and a postcard. If you spend $9, then you get a few more perks. And the higher you go, obviously, the more perks you get. But it's kind of a cool thing to be able to, a cool platform to support musicians and artists and things. It's a way for us to keep providing content for you guys. And yeah, it's just a cool thing. And I have other artist friends that do it too, so it's kind of fun because I can subscribe to their content and learn from them. All right. Okay, so again, like I said, we could add to these clouds all day long, all day. A blob? All right. So let's take a break for a minute. I know some of you guys may be like, whew, that was hard work. I'm not sure how I feel about my clouds yet. Let's take a minute, take a breather, take a break from that for a second, clean off your paintbrush, and then we're just gonna dip into some black, and we're gonna start on the silhouette right now, and then we can come back to the clouds if you guys have questions about doing the clouds in a minute, okay? So I'm still using the same brush. I'm gonna take some black paint, and I'm just gonna create a little landscape down here on the bottom of my surface. And so to go in the theme of the curved lines that we created, I'm just gonna create like a tiny little hillside on this side over here. And then I'm just gonna like maybe ½ an inch up from the bottom, create kind of like a wiggly ground in black paint, okay? So if you guys aren't ready for this part, that's okay. We're just gonna talk about it, and I'm gonna do it, and then when you guys are ready, just let me know and I can repeat the steps too. But I'm gonna take my brush and I'm gonna take just black paint, and I'm gonna go just along the bottom of my canvas. And so on the right side, I'm gonna create a little hillside that's slanted in, and then create a little curve, okay? And then about ½ inch from the bottom, I can create, like a little lumpy bumpy land. And then when I get to the left side of my canvas, I'm gonna do the same thing. And these hills don't need to be really big, because we want the major focus of our painting to be most of the color and stuff that's glowing, but we want a nice contrast. So if you're not getting a crisp edge when you put the black on, make sure you have a nice big blob of black paint, and that you push really firmly against your brush and then drag. So if you push, your bristles should be kind of bent, and that'll make sure that you get a nice crisp edge. Okay. So if you want to make these hills more dramatic later, you can definitely do that. But let's start minimally. Let's make our details just nice and small for now, and then we can always go back in and make them bigger if we want to. Okay, and so these can be bumpy, they can be curvy. I just want to make sure that we're bringing our viewer's eye in. So we're curving those edges to make them just a little bit, draw our viewer's eye in. It's okay if your guys' paintings don't look like mine. I want all of these paintings to look a little bit different, and I bet you that it is beautiful in its own unique way. And like I said, if you have things that you're struggling with or issues that you want to work on, we can definitely talk about those. Just send me a message and we can figure that out. So I'm doing black here, and I'm just going to talk about how to create a tree. Can I get hello, hello, hello? Sushmita, you are hilarious. You're being silly over there. Hopefully you're doing okay. Is everybody ready to learn how to make some trees? Because I want to talk about how to do trees next. So if you guys are ready to do some trees, give me some thumbs up. You ready to make some trees, guys? Okay. Okay, so I'm going to give you guys a very easy way. So obviously it might be really hard to do a perfect straight line if you have this kind of paintbrush. So I'm going to give you guys a simple way to make a straight line if you have something handy. So if you have a piece of paper, you can use a piece of paper. If you have like a credit card or an ID or something like that, you can use that. But what we want is we want to have a straight edge. See? So what I'm going to do is, depending on, I want to figure out how big I want my trees to be, right? So I'm going to take whatever straight edge I have. So if you have a hard piece of paper, cardstock works good. If you have, like I said, like the edge of your ID or something, you're just going to take black paint and you're going to tap it along the edge of that hard edge. And it's paint, so it'll come off. So if it's like a grocery card or something like that, don't worry, you can just wipe it off or wash it off. It'll scrape right off. But yeah, so you just want to take the hard edge and you're just going to see I'm just tapping along the edge here, and you're going to use it like a stamp. So I'm just going to create one tree here off at the bottom of my hill that kind of overlaps. So this is going to be the trunk of my tree. That's just so I have a nice little straight edge. And I'm just going to do one of those to start, okay? And that's just so you guys have a nice basis to start from. So you take the hard edge of, like, you know, credit card. So if it's a credit card, then you can do 2 stamps, you know, and kind of scrape it back and forth a little bit. If you have a piece of paper, you can do that. If you want your line to be thicker, you can also fold the piece of paper like this, and then just don't crease it all the way. And then you can paint along the edge of the fold like this, and it'll make a fatter line. So that's another thing that you can do for that. But we're going to go back to a tapping method here. So I'm going to take black paint on my brush, and I'm going to put it in there, but I'm going to wipe it off. So I have it on my brush, but it's not a ton. And I'm going to leave the top edge because I want my tree to look pointy. So I want to leave the little section of my tree alone. And then I'm just going to start at the trunk, and I'm just going to tap my brush like this, just so I get a little T there, okay? And then I'm going to move down, and I'm going to make a section that's just so I'm going to use the flat part of my brush. And if your brush is wider than mine, you can just use the corner to make it a little bit wider on each side. But I'm just going to tap my brush across the trunk in little sections here. So I don't need it to be symmetrical in every section, so maybe I'll start at the trunk and I'll tap out to make it a little bit wider on, you know, one section, and then maybe tap across and leave it over here. So the thing that people run into, the trouble that people run into when they start tapping and making these trees, is they make the tops of their trees too big too fast. So what I want you guys to avoid doing is don't, you know, get rid of the point of your tree. You want to leave that point, and then these little sections up here, keep them really small. See, and I'm tapping across the middle. So you shouldn't even really see the trunk anymore, because I'm just tapping and going across. So I'm not making these all perfectly even. It's like it might be shorter on this side and then longer on this, and it's okay if it kind of, you know, sweeps down a little bit. And it's okay if I tap and make this a little bit messy on the inner edge so it's a little bit thicker and comes down here. We're going to fill the inside. So, but see, I'm tapping, and then as I come out, it's going to slant down. This branch is going to slant down a little bit, and it's also going to kind of come to a point. So it's thicker in the middle and skinnier with less pressure as I come out and away from the tree, okay? But you want to make sure that these ones up here, you go like a quarter of the way down the tree. These are going to be real tiny, and then as you come down, these will gradually get bigger. You'll also notice I'm leaving space between each of the branches, and the reason why I'm doing that is because in order to create an effective silhouette, you need to have the contrast of light and dark. And if you just fill this all with black, then you're not going to be able to see all those beautiful colors that you created behind. So I want to make sure that I'm going down the trunk and at an angle and then coming out, but I'm leaving space between each of my branches, okay? And I'm actually going to bring, and you can even, you don't have to make it wider, you can even make it short again at the bottom, okay? And then you can kind of swipe with your brush if you want to make that a little bit wider at the base, okay? And you can bring those branches as far down as you want. If you've ever hiked in the woods, you may have seen like a tree where half the branches are gone on one side and maybe it's, you know, not growing on one part and it is on another. So I want you guys to play. So in the original, here I'm going to show you the original again. See, I made one big tree here at the bottom of the hill, then maybe I made like a medium and then a tiny one, and then I did a few more on this side. But you'll notice they're all different sizes. They're not all perfectly going up and down. You know, one is slanted, maybe the other one is going further away, and then the smaller they are, the kind of further away they look. So I like to do one tree at a time because I want to make sure that I have enough space between each tree that I create too, so that I can still keep all that color. So see, maybe I'll make another tree, but I'm going to make it a little bit shorter so I can tap the side of my paper like that. And then maybe I can make another one right here. Okay, or maybe make another one over here. Okay. So again, you don't need a lot of paint. Don't get rid of the top point of your tree because you don't want to lose that. And then when you start to tap and create these little branches, don't make them go straight out. You want them to kind of slant down and be thicker towards the trunk and then come to a point as they come out. And don't make them symmetrical too, because that'll make, or don't make them exactly the same size and exactly, you know, opposite of each other, because we want to make this tree look natural and organic. So that means maybe start one a little bit shorter, make one a little bit wider. Okay, and then the less pressure with your brush, the smaller your brush stroke is, the more hard you push, the thicker that is. And look, it can even go into the side of the hill. See? Make sense, guys? Hopefully. So to do those top branches, you can just use the corner edge of your brush just to create some very small branches. Tap, tap, tap. And then as you come like about a quarter or, you know, a third of the way down the tree, those branches can start to get bigger. If you have a smaller brush, that might work well for some of you guys. But yeah, it's better if the branches slant down from the trunk, because you want to think of it this way. The weight of the branch is going to pull it down. You don't want it to point straight up unless it's a certain kind of tree, and then you can kind of change it. But now I'm going to add some trees on the other side. So just tap, tap, tap. You see I'm leaving that top alone so it stays pointy. I'm making these branches really small. Tap, 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 going across the middle. And then, so make sure that when you're tapping these branches in, that you're just gradually making each branch bigger. You don't want to all of a sudden make a tiny branch and then, woo, make a branch that's like, 3 inches long. And it's okay if they get a little messy, because then it looks like there's, different branches poking out. See? And we want it to be a little bit more filled in, like you want them to be a little bit more thick in the middle and then thinner as they move away from the tree, so that you still have that positive, negative space. And see, I can wipe my brush at the bottom to make that trunk thicker, or look thicker if I want to. And so if you need to make shorter trees, just use shorter edge of your card or shorter edge of your paper to make sure that you have smaller sections. See? Does anybody have questions about the trees, or are those coming along smoothly? Just remember that it's an illusion and you don't have to make them precise. This is, a figment of your imagination. And so people are just using this to, respond to the illusion that you create. And so as long as it's kind of this triangular shape and you've got, you're following the same formula for all the trees, it should work well. And if you did lose the top of your tree, but for some reason, you can just very lightly pull up with your brush to create that point again if you need to. The key is, though, to not overfill. You want to make sure that you're leaving enough adequate space between the trees and enough adequate space between the branches so that you have an effective contrast of the light that's in the background and then the dark color of the trees, okay? So while I'm waiting for you guys to catch up and paint trees, you can see you can come back in and you can add more highlights to your clouds or you can always come back and add extra details if you want to, or you feel that you missed something and you wanted to add it back in. You don't have to be done just because we're done with this session. So the last step, guys, is to learn how to make the little UFO and the little alien guy. So I want to make sure that everybody's caught up, and then we'll move on to that step. If you want to, you can add a few stars in there too. I just use the handle of my paintbrush and dip a little white, and up in those dark areas you can fill that in. So just to give you guys an idea, again, here's the original painting. So there's our sky there. See, I used a lot of purples and pinks in the original. This one I went for more blues. But yeah, so I have my trees framing the outer edge, and then I have my little figure that's down here, and then I have my UFO that's up there. So if you do want to create a little UFO, I just like to clean my brush and I put black paint on it, and then I create a very tiny oval at a slant in the sky. So if you're not controlled with your brush and you don't feel comfortable with this, you can also, you know, come in with a Sharpie or a pen or something later. But you just need a nice little narrow oval. And then you just need to create a line on either side. So you can use the edge of your paintbrush to start from the middle and then pull out like that if you want to. And that's how I did that. If you want to add some lights to your UFO, I didn't do this in the original, but if you did want to do that, you could take yellow or white, and I just dip my brush into the handle into that, and then you can add some little lights to your UFO like that if you want to. You do some beams, some tractor beams if this is all dry. I didn't do this in the original either, but if you want to do it, you can. So I'm going to take a little bit of white and a little bit of yellow. So just the tiniest bit. So I'm taking a little white and yellow, and I'm going to wipe my brush off really good because I don't want to have a lot. I want to have just a tiny bit. And then see, I can take the skinny part of my brush, and then I can pull very lightly down to create some little little rays of light if you want to. And then the last part of this painting is to make this little figure. So what I'm going to do is, in order to create an effective figure, I'm going to use the handle of my paintbrush, not the bristles. I'm going to use the handle, and I'm going to decide where I want the head to be. And I'm just going to make a dot, and then I'm going to wiggle or make my brush go around in a circle. So if you want that shape to be more oval, more like an alien, you can manipulate the paint and make it come down. But I go about an inch or so above the canvas or above the ground. And then you can either use your card stock, your piece of paper, or your edge. So if you're worried about your paintbrush and not being able to control it well enough, you can use the little edge of your paper or your card. See, so stamp that, and then you can create a line so this looks like a balloon. See? Okay, and this is going to be where the body is. Here, I'm going to adjust mine so. Okay, so I just made a line there, so it looks like a dum-dum. And then I'm going to turn this into a T, so I have little shoulders, like that. And again, I'm just using the handle of my paintbrush. I'm not even using the bristles, I'm using the handle. Okay, and then you can start, touch from that, and then pull down. So I'm just scraping. So every time I need more paint, I just dip into more paint, and then I scrape. See, and then this is the body, but then you can create another leg by just using the handle. So I'm just touching and then pulling it this way. So it's like an upside down Y, and then you can make that as thick. So you can fill in the body if you want to. So see here, I can start to fill in the body underneath so that those arms have armpits. If you make one leg too big, just make the other one as big, or you can switch back to your brush. But yeah, that's pretty much it, guys. It's an alien, so it's not supposed to look normal, right? If you want to give it antennas, you can give it antennas. If you want to make the arms longer or thicker. If you want to give it tentacles, you can give it tentacles. If you want to give it eyes, you can give it eyes. If you want it to be a puppy instead of an alien, you can certainly do that too. It's your painting. It's up to you guys to create the piece that you want it to be. So here is my finished piece after the class, and then here I'll show you. I'll go back to the original so you guys can see what the original looked like here. So see my little figure there in the distance? So I went about an inch or so up from the canvas, or the ground, and then I used the handle of my paintbrush to create a little dot, and then I made a line coming down. I made a T for the shoulders so that I could make those arms come down, and then I turned the legs into an upside down Y so I could get those legs spread apart. But yeah, so you can add beams of light coming to lift that alien up into the sky. You could add little dots to the ship to you know, make it look like there's lights glowing on board. You could definitely do more than one UFO. So if you wanted to have multiple in the sky, or you wanted to add some birds, you can definitely do lots of different things to make this painting your own. So woo, that's it. But yeah, that's it, guys. So hopefully this was helpful to you. Hopefully you guys had a good time painting with me and you enjoyed yourself. And does anybody have any questions? There's the original painting there. Ta-da! Yay! So that's it, guys. That's what I've got for you this afternoon. Hopefully it was helpful for you and you enjoyed yourself, and I'm happy that you guys are tuning in. How would you do a dog? Iris, message me later and maybe I can give you some pointers on how to create a dog for your painting, or maybe we can do that in another class. My name is Danielle Rimbert. I'm the owner of Rimbert Illustration. I live in Port Orchard, Washington. If you guys are interested in more events, feel free to subscribe, like, and follow Rimbert Illustration's Facebook page or my Instagram for more updates. You can also subscribe to the Patreon if you guys are interested in classes and techniques for all the time according to your schedule. If you guys found value in this class, although it is free today, if you want to make a contribution, I always love extra assistance. I enjoy helping you guys, and if you thought that it brought value to you, then I'm very happy and grateful for that. So anyway, like I said, message me with questions. If you have additional things that you need input on, please share your pictures and tell people what we're doing here. And hopefully I'll see you next Wednesday afternoon at 4 o'clock. Oh, I wanted to show you guys. We're going to be painting. Here we go. Dropping stuff. We're going to be painting this painting next week. So you'll learn how to do the speckled frogs, or the speckled rocks and the frog, and then we'll talk about how to create those ferns. So if that's something that you're interested in, or you know somebody that would be interested in learning to do that. Like I said, follow, like, and subscribe, and let your friends know. And I hope you guys enjoy the rest of your day. Stay safe, and thank you so much for your support.